So this is a figure that I've been pretty worried about since it first got announced. I mean, it's a character at a weird scale next to the rest of his team that doesn't really seem to merit it comparatively. Like, who is Skullgrin, and why is he the pretender important enough to get the big figure? Is it because they realized that he sucked at a small scale and thought that maybe if they made him bigger it wouldn't be so bad? And that alt mode does not look finished in the pictures that Hasbro put out. So I've been concerned. And dear God, did I have every right to be, because this thing sucks. I just don't even know what they were thinking. This thing has good aspects, it's got good ideas, however the execution is desperately wanting. Now to be fair, the look of this figure in robot mode is not a problem. From the front. From behind, while this thing is actually not all that gappy, save for the wrists, it looks terrible. Like somehow it gives off the impression of gappiness without gaps. I don't know how better to describe that. But from the front, this thing is a stupid heavy metal monster straight out of 80s album covers, and I am so here for that. I'd love to see more stupid crap come out of the Transformers. The only problem I have with this thing's head-on view is the horns on his head. The way these transform for the alt mode sucks something fierce. It breaks the sculpt horrifically, and these are rubber, while also not being pinned. So these just pop off if you turn to look at the figure too hard. It senses the vibrations and falls to pieces out of pure spite. Legacy Wave 3 QC strikes again. I am not joking when I say I stopped counting the number of times the horns fell off during the transformation the first time I ran through it when I hit 20. And let me tell you, it did not slow down with the falling off after that point either. I don't know why they did this. I hate it so much. It's bad enough that these are separate parts, but did they really have to make them rubber and then just flat out not pin them? This got a lot of paint and a cool design, yet they screwed up the head, which is the best part of the whole thing. You may also notice that it's cocked off to the side a little. That's because the joint has some kind of deformity, so it can't rest in the middle. And the hips are also absurdly over-tight, to the point where I accidentally move just about everything but the hips before I get them to budge. Like I said, I do like the look of this thing. It does kind of pain me to crap on it so much. It's just that if the horns didn't transform in the first place, this would be better. And if it weren't made out of rubber, it'd be better too. And if it were at least pins, then it could have been tolerable. But I don't know why Wave 3 is just flipping the bird to having QC. Like having it at all, not just good QC, because here's the sad thing. Like I said, I have most of Wave 3, and this is probably the best figure on a quality front I got out of it. And these are the problems that this has. This is the best one, and it's chock full of issues. What happened? Wave 1 and 2 were great. I love the belt buckle. I love the sculpting. I love the colors. It's actually a pretty reasonable size for a deluxe today. It's not like Cliffjumper, who's just a hair over Legends. This is a real deluxe. Though that does mean that he's bigger than his compatriots, which I can get over, but it's really kind of a bummer. I wish that either the other two were bigger, or probably more preferably, this was smaller. They use a lot of paint on this figure, which, you know me, I don't care about, but it does say that they spent some money on it. So I just have to question why none of that went to QC. I mean, it at least makes the figure feel like they half tried, I guess. Like there's more than a little good here. It's just being overshadowed by stupid issues that shouldn't have made it far enough to get into our hands. I like what I see when I look at this, but I don't like handling it. I guess that's the best way I have to describe it. I especially like the head. Ignoring the problems with the horns, if we pretend that these are all one solid piece, this would look sick as hell. It kind of looks a little too much like a mask, given how this is clearly bone compared to the rest of the robot, but still, it's really good looking. And you know what? I love Scooby-Doo, so masks are cool too. I don't know if these little ear things are supposed to stick straight up like this, but much like with the Menasor and Abominus, I think they look a lot cooler swooped back a bit. The plastic they used for this was great too. It really does look just like bone. Hasbro's been having some trouble with whites lately, and it's cool to see them nail the white they want for a change. Just here's hoping that it doesn't yellow. The sculpting is great, and the eyes positively pop here. So on a visual front, the figure looks great. They put a ton of effort into the robot mode's appearance, doing an amazing job with the sculpting and painting. But they phoned in the QC so hard, it kind of ruins it to the touch. And that's not where the problems end, because then we get to accessories. And while he actually has a ton, which makes his scale even more impressive, we've got issues. First up, I want to say that I'm pretty happy with the backpack, other than maybe it shouldn't have come off. Like, why is this an option? But you can remove it and separate it into 3 parts, so you can take these ones and have him hold them like guns, or attach them to his shoulders like Null Rays, or slam them on the backs of his arms, covering up some of the hollowness and giving him some kind of weird alternative to the fusion cannons. They're painted well enough, and you get a tail that you can peg onto a figure that's got one sticking out of it. Like, I guess you can give Bulkhead Shield some wagging action, or something. But my real problem comes with the next accessories. He's got some well-painted sword guns, which would be cool if they weren't fucking rubber. Why? Why would you do this? If you wanted the blades to be white, you used white paint on the figure. So cast them in the gray plastic of the legs and paint the blades white. It would have saved you so much paint and a different variety of paint. There's nowhere else on this figure with this metallic gray paint on it. So you are spending more money to make a worse accessory. Oh, I hate the way this feels. And it's super annoying that the barrel on the end is not blast effect compatible. What a waste. These could have been so good, and they are just sabotaged at every step of the way. Overall, if you ignore the swords, I suppose you can say that these are good accessories. Then there's the posability, which is pretty decent. Like I said, this has some pros, but some huge cons as well. Head has like 10 times the upwards range compared to most figures, but getting off to the side, and it's weird as hell because the way the face is shaped makes it have to come up to get over the shoulder. Arms pull a 90 and almost have backwards butterflies. Extreme elbows, and sword-wielding wrists. Legs use a lot of force to go forwards and backwards just fine, but they pull like a 30 off to the side because of the unnecessary sculpting on the sides. Normal 90 knees, which you can fake really hard for a tiny amount more, and feet that have a rocker, which you can fake super hard for some more down. The QC on this makes the posing feel worse than it is, but it's actually pretty decent overall. Head is great, shoulders are fine, but they could have been better, elbows are fantastic, and the sword-wielding wrists are a big plus, despite the figure coming with terrible swords, and there being no rotation in them. With the lower body being really below average, like the fact that he barely has any sideways action on the legs is infuriating, and the knees just feel lame. So, pretty good, but mixed in some weird ways. Then we get to the transformation, and this is where my issues with this figure really start to compound. I hear people apparently call this a complex transformation, and just what are you smoking? It does a few weird things in ways that you really haven't seen before, but complex? No, this is pretty simple. You're basically just Jacob's laddering the torso into a plank, flipping the head through a hole, and folding the legs under that with some treads on struts working their ways around to the back. And I can't help but feel like the head, instead of going through the torso, should have been mounted on a hinge here that would allow it to fold down to sit in front of the legs like the concept art had it do. That would have been so much cooler, and it wouldn't result in the horns falling off 100,000 times, making me want to rip out all my hair and scream at the top of my lungs until I cough up blood. I just don't reattach these anymore when they fall off after the transformation until it's basically over now. This whole thing should take you like 30 seconds if you get the groove down to maybe a minute. And then you have the alt mode, and just holy shit, what a turd this thing is. Ignoring how it looks for a second, there's a giant fuck-off gap in the side. Even when you can't see clear through the figure, the sides are structural as hell and terrible. It barely wants to hold together, and what's the last thing I have to say? Oh yeah, what is this bullshit nothing of a mode? This is not a tank. Shut the fuck up, no it's not. They could have so easily molded some treads on the side here to make it look even 1% like it's not grinding on its front being pushed by the treads on its back. It would have cost them no extra money, so why didn't they do that? Why is it that in that place there is only a tab that doesn't actually go to anything? Oh wait, no, it goes to the parts forming swords that are meant to try and hide the massive gap, but don't, and literally only make it look worse. If you try to argue with me that this is a hover tank, then why the fuck is the back on treads and the front just allowed to drag on the ground? I was going to say that the front end is such an afterthought, but everything about this mode is an afterthought. It's got arms sticking off the back, it's got gaps everywhere, about this much of it actually looks like a tank, and the rest of it is just trash hanging off the front end. The cannons look anemic and tiny hanging off the ass of the alt mode, and god, the skull up front in the concept art looked so cool. It would have actually done a lot of heavy lifting tying this together into some kind of heavy metal apocalypse hellworld tank. That could have been awesome. Instead, this mode is just trash. It looks awful. Every inch of it is a cheat. This is an unbearable mode that is the epitome of terrible Cybertronian alt modes that aren't anything they purport to be. They're just a thing that claims it's this type of thing, but all they're doing is lying to you. And honestly, this should have just been a Legends figure. Everything wrong with it could have been excusable at that scale. Weak QC? It's a Legends figure. Rubber horns? They'd be tiny and easily snapped if they were smaller. Solid posing? Great for a Legends figure. Weird but average transformation? That's really cool for a Legends figure. Desperately flawed alt mode that doesn't look like anything and is only hinting at what it wants to be, forcing you to use your imagination? Yeah, that's still pretty bad for a Legends figure because we've seen a lot better in that regard, but it's not unreasonable at that scale. This would be pretty sick in the core class. I wouldn't be crapping on it. I'd be singing its praises. But as it is, it's just so fucking phoned in. It's like they had a good robot mode, but they didn't spend the money on making sure it wasn't built like crap, and they had a cool concept for the alt mode, but they didn't spend the money to finish it. It's like a half-completed alt mode. Not even that, it's a third completed. And it's still got QC issues out the ass. It's a good idea developed as far as $5 from Hasbro could take it. It could have been awesome, but instead it's just cheap and lazy. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.